Today I'm going to walk you through step by step what exactly to do when you are adding mixed numbers and your answer has an improper fraction as part of it. A lot of us like to leave our improper fraction as part of our answer, and this, even though you know the skills, will get you the wrong answer and won't give you the full credit for what you actually know how to do. So you really want to be aware that when you're adding mixed numbers and even when you're subtracting mixed numbers, that your answer does not have an improper fraction as part of the answer. An improper fraction, in case you forget, is when your numerator is bigger than your denominator. When you're adding and subtracting, this also means that if your numerator is equal or the same as your denominator, then you also want to make sure that you change that to a mixed number or a whole number. So sometimes when we add mixed numbers, part of our answer is improper. We need to double check that we do not leave it this way as part of our answer. So let's look at an example together. So let's say we have 5 3/4 plus 7 3/4. We're pretty familiar with reading these mixed numbers at this point. We know that the 5 and the 7 are the whole and the 3/4 are the fractional part. So if you're thinking of a real life example of these mixed numbers, you could say, okay, I'm going to go to a pizza place and I am going to order 5 whole pizzas and 3/4 of a pizza. So in your head, you can picture 5 whole pizzas, so the whole thing. And then you can also picture 3/4 of a pizza. Same thing with 7 3/4. You can picture 7 whole pizzas and then 3/4 of a pizza. So what are the steps to adding these two mixed numbers together? The first thing we are going to do, we want to add our whole numbers together. So in this case, we're going to be adding 5 and we're going to be adding 7 together. The next thing we want to do is add our fractions. But what happens to our fraction, though, as part of our answer? So take a look at this work sample with me. Okay, so we have 5 3/4 here, and we have 7 3/4 here. Notice that I put the whole numbers and the fractions in two different colors. That I did on purpose to show us the difference between our whole numbers and our fractions. So when we add our whole numbers, 5 plus 7, we get 12. And when we add 3/4 plus 3/4, we get 6/4. Now remember, and we do a good job with this, our numerators we add, but our denominators, what do? Good, they stay the same. So we're not adding 4 plus 4 to give us 8. We leave it simply as 4. So when we put our whole numbers together with our fraction, we get 12 6/4. But are we done? A lot of you might be thinking, yeah, we're done. We added, we did what we needed to do. We're done. No. Look at that 6/4. What kind of fraction is 6/4? Right, it's improper. Because 6/4 is an improper fraction, that means we are not quite done with this problem. So here's our problem just to remind us, 5 3/4 plus 7 3/4. Here's what we need to do. We need to change our improper fraction to a mixed number. So we've got our 6/4. In case you forget how to change an improper fraction to a mixed number, we need to divide here. What are we dividing? We're dividing our numerator by our denominator. So in this case, we're taking 6 and dividing it by 4. If you're sitting there going, oh man, 6 divided by 4, I really don't know what that is. Flip it. We know that division and multiplication are inverse operations, so we can flip that and instead say, okay, 4 times what number is going to get me as close to 6 as possible without going over? In this case, that would be 1. And then you want to think, okay, what do I have left over? How do I get from 4, which is 1 times 4, How do I get from 4 to 6? What am I adding to get from 4 to 6? I'm adding 2. 2 is my remainder. So here's where kids get confused too. When you're taking that quotient in your remainder, what do we do with it? What part of the mixed number does it become? Your quotient, so your whole number, becomes your whole number part of your mixed number. So in this case, 1 becomes our whole number. Your remainder becomes your numerator. And your denominator is going to stay the same. So we brought down the 4 from up here to our denominator. Don't forget, when we're talking about adding and subtracting, changing mixed numbers to improper fractions to mixed numbers, you want to think of your denominator like a lazy couch potato. This is a good visual to remind you, hey, my denominator doesn't really change. The only time it really does is when we simplify. Other than that, when we add, when we subtract, we don't do anything to that denominator. It's a lazy couch potato. It stays the same. Okay, so now we've successfully changed our improper fraction to a mixed number. So now what? A lot of kids are going to tell me that 1 2/4 is my answer. Why is that? They're forgetting about our whole number that we added before. So there's one more step we need to do in order to be done with adding these two mixed numbers. So we are not quite done yet. Now we need to add our whole numbers to our mixed number that we just changed. So remember that 12 from way before when we added 5 plus 7, that gave us 12? Here's what we need to do. We need to take that 12 that we've added before, take our new mixed number, 1 2/4, add them together. The 12 plus 1 get added to give you 13. 2/4 stay the same. You just carry it over and hook it on to the 13, and you get 13 2/4. So now you're probably thinking, okay, now we're done, right? No, not quite. There's one more teensy-weensy step we need to do in order to be finished with this problem. What is the last thing we need to do? Your favorite thing in the world, we need to simplify. Super, super important that you simplify every single answer when you're working with fractions, unless the problem tells you not to. You've always got to simplify. Whether you're adding, whether you're subtracting, whatever you are doing, you need to make sure that you are simplifying. Okay? Really, really, really important that you remember to do this because a lot of kids forget it and it either makes or breaks your answer. You've got to remember to simplify. So, in case you forget how to simplify, here are the 3 simple steps to do so. Step number 1, write your factors, write the factors, not your the factors, of your numerator and your denominator. So write them out. What's your factors of your numerator, your factors of your denominator? Once you have those written out, find the GCF. If you forget what the GCF is, that stands for greatest common factor, or the biggest factor they have that are the same. Finally, divide your numerator and your denominator by your GCF. Always remember, way back when we did equivalent fractions, what you do to the top, you also have to do to the bottom. Okay? Then add your whole number to your simplified answer, and finally we're done. So it should look something like this. Okay? We have 1 2/4. We realize 2/4 is not simplified. So I've written out my factors of 2, which are 1 and 2. I've written out my factors of 4, which are 1, 2, and 4. I notice that 2 is my GCF, so I use that as the number I divide by. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. Take that 1 1/2, add it to my 12. I get 13 1/2. Now I am done. Okay? Keep these steps in mind when you're adding mixed numbers. While yes, it seems like a very easy skill, a lot of kids are forgetting that you can't have an improper fraction as part of your answer. If you do, then you've got a couple extra steps that you need to do in order to be finished.